Morning and welcome to the latest of our LawTech online sessions that Barclays deliver in partnership with CodeBase. My name is Chris Grant and I head up LawTech within Barclays and Barclays Ventures, working very much within the Notting Hill Gate lab ecosystem. Joined today also by Martin. How are you, Martin?
I'm great, Chris. Nice to see you as ever. I feel like this is getting to be a bit of a regular occurrence. Hopefully it's not becoming too Morecambe and Wisey.
I don't know what I'll do with my mornings if they don't start like this going forward. This has become too regular and too much of a habit. I very much look forward to doing them. So look, a couple of housekeeping points before we get started. We're delighted to be joined by Udom at Twilio this morning. We're going to be talking a little around driving efficiency and growing and certainly supporting growth within the LawTech ecosystem and looking at some of the variances between adoption of technology in-house as well as within legal functions and law firms, but I'll let Martin talk a little more around that. A couple of things for you to know. Look, we're excited to have this conversation today, but look, this really is here to just provide you with some options and things to think about and should be partnered with any of your own independent research that you do when making any of the business decisions that you're coming to. And also please remember that your business has its own individual circumstances, so some of the statements and views that are presented today may not necessarily be applicable for the business that you're in.
Thanks, Chris, because please do ask questions, because I think that one of the things that this forum depends on is answering the questions that people have of interest in. I'll just do a really quick brief intro from me. I know that many of you who join us on the webinars will know Chris and I now almost intimately. I work at CodeBase, which is a tech community based in Edinburgh. Normally, I'd be in a building with 100-odd companies above me. Those companies are very disparate in terms of what they deliver, but they're all tech product companies and on various stages of their development journey. We run LawTech with Barclays, so Chris and I work very closely with each other. We're coming up on 1 year anniversary of having done LawTech events mostly out of the Notting Hill Gate Eagle Lab. But without further ado, I'd really like to introduce everybody to Joy. Joy Udom works at Twilio. She's the managing director and the counsel for the commercial legal team. I might promote you. Managing director is not what you told me. Director, managing counsel, commercial legal at Twilio. Congratulations, Joy, on your rapid promotion to the high ranks of Twilio. Don't tell anybody. Hi, and welcome.
No, thank you, Martin. I'll definitely take that promotion. Thank you.
Absolutely. Make sure it comes with a hefty pay rise.
Yeah.
So Joy's here to talk about her experience with law and LawTech. I think, Joy, what would be really nice for everybody is to get to know you a bit better. So perhaps you can just tell us a bit about you, where you are, what you're doing just now, in particular, how you've been kind of coping with the last 10 weeks when we've all been in our homes rather than doing what we've done previously. So a wee bit over to you, and then you and I will just kick off a conversation. Maybe, Chris, if you've got anything that you want to ask specifically of Joy, you can. We'll both be keeping an eye on VVox in terms of making sure that we follow up with the questions. And also there'll be some polls, so pay attention, everybody, because we'll be asking some poll questions to make sure that you are indeed using the VVox link below. So Joy, over to you, a wee bit about you, maybe.
Well, thank you, Martin. So yeah, just as Martin said, my name is Joy Udom. I work at Twilio and I'm the managing counsel for the commercial legal team at Twilio. I head up the team in EMEA. What we really are, Twilio is a cloud application platform. We just provide our customers, with APIs for them to build communication applications. So different channels, whether it's voice, chat, video, WhatsApp, whatever the channel is, our APIs can enable our customers build those applications. And the aim of all of that is to enhance customer engagement. That's really what Twilio is there for. I've been at Twilio for about a year and 8 months now, and within the tech sector for much longer. So at Twilio, what we do is, my role is primarily supporting what we call the go-to-market functions. So sales for direct sales, the partnership team for indirect sales. We also support like things around mostly negotiations of deals, but even the construct of those deals. So the way we monetize our products and how we legally structure, the model with which we go to the market, all of the legal and commercial conversations around that. We get involved in lots of process improvement work, lots of projects, lots of trainings. And the beauty about it, of course, is that it's supporting the entire region. So that variety from different jurisdictions also come into play. I've been within the tech sector for a while now, but I haven't always been in tech, I must say. I've tried a few things. I think very early on in my career, I knew I wanted to go in house. I knew I wanted to do commercial contracts, but I didn't quite know what industry or sector I wanted to do it in. It just kind of happened, working within businesses, and then as the whole cloud offering started taking off, just got involved in helping the businesses with whenever we're procuring cloud services, and that's where the seed was sown. And I realized it was something I really liked because of how dynamic the solutions are, the products are, and it was relatable because these are things that affect me as an individual as well. It's not abstract. I then made the conscious decision that I wanted to carry on within the tech sector, and so I've been doing that for some years now, and I definitely enjoy it.
Just picking up a little bit on what you were talking about there, of course, I think Twilio is probably maybe 2008 Twilio was started. So I don't know how long you've been involved with the law, but there's no way, presumably, that you could have predicted that you would have ended up working for a SaaS or a cloud-based company, because when you started, it didn't exist. So maybe a wee bit about your background in terms of what did you do before you moved in-house and you did, because one of the questions that Chris and I get asked a great deal by LawTech aspirant lawyers, whether they be general counsel or in private practices, so how do I get into this legal tech malarkey? So what did you do before you moved in-house and got into cloud-based stuff? And then maybe I'll ask you some more questions about your experience of working for Twilio. But I also know that before you worked for Twilio, you worked for Salesforce. So maybe a bit about that too.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I actually started my career as a litigator. So I qualified first as a barrister. And I just wanted, as a young lawyer, I just wanted the real, it's almost like the drama I see on television. I wanted to experience it in real life. So I did that for a year. And then I decided not quite what I want to do. I wanted to work closely with businesses. Why I knew I wanted to go in-house was because I wanted to see how the legal advice and the value I'm bringing to the table really merges, or the impact it has to real business decisions and real real ways that companies are selling services or whatever they're doing. So I decided to go in-house. I started working for I worked for manufacturing company, financial services. I enjoyed the role that I really did very early on in my career for a chemicals company, Infineum. But then what I think some things just happened by chance. Some things I knew, some things I didn't know. What happened is when the whole wave around tech and cloud started happening, every webinar, every seminar, every article was around cloud agreements. I just soaked up that information. And I remember when the businesses within the organization I work, like the procurement, supply chain, HR, payroll, started considering this kind of solutions. Most of the people within the team were like, oh, I don't really have the expertise. Oh, yeah, it's cloud. I don't know, tech contracts. Frankly, I just went in there and got my hands dirty. That's simply it. And I think it's when you try something, you know whether it's for you or it's not for you. If you never try, then you don't know. So as I did that, I found out I liked it, I enjoyed it. And then I moved to work for a systems integration company that really took different systems that a company would have, provide consultancy services, and then make those systems talk to each other. And from there, I then worked for Demandware that was then acquired by Salesforce. This was an e-commerce platform service. And then when it was acquired by Salesforce, I went on to work for Salesforce. I think what was interesting, and we can talk about this further down the line, is how you have two tech companies. You had Demandware. I think about over 1,000 employees, so not a very small company, though not very big. However, there was very little automation in the way we carried out our legal services. Practically everything was manual. And then You go over to Salesforce, where it's a much bigger company, of course. Think about the offerings, think about the volumes, the number of sales reps you're supporting within the commercial team, the volume of transactions. The only way you can operate is to think about, how am I going to do it efficiently? How am I going to automate as much as possible? How am I going to leverage the systems and the tools that we have? And they did that brilliantly. And when the opportunity came up to head the team and build the commercial legal team at Twilio, it was a no-brainer for me, because during the interview process, some of the questions I asked, it gave me the picture of a company that was growing its legal function, but very early on thinking about being an early adopter of technology in how we use that and leverage that to provide services to our business. Twilio has grown enormously. We've doubled in size of employees since I joined. Within the region I support, I think the team I support has tripled, to be honest.
Wow.
So, and this is like within a period of less than 2 years. And so I have to continuously think, and my team, we have to continuously ask ourselves, we would never have as many human lawyers as they are to sales reps, or as they are to marketing people or procurement. It's not going to be possible. But the way we can really drive and enable that growth is to think about, what are we doing? How can we iterate and improve the way we are delivering that service to provide better business partnership for the teams we support?
Nice, thank you. So we have the polls are in. Good news. So this gives us both a little bit of a break, actually, because I know that talking to camera and this can be quite exhausting. So well, let's get either Chrissy or Ash to flash up the results of the survey. I've not seen them, so here we go. Most people had heard of Twilio before we started. I either need better glasses or no, here we go. I can see that 92% of people have cast a vote, and that the majority of them, by a slim margin, it has to be said, knew that Twilio existed. So more work to do from your marketing team, would appear. Either that, or you're very content to be the engine that powers the internet connectively in the background, and only the people who use you need to know about you. Because I know that having had a bit of a look, some of the biggest companies on the internet used Uber, for example, use Twilio to tell you that your cab's on its way. So thanks very much, Ash and Chrissy. That's great. So that gives us a bit of a feel as to whether what you've been talking about is new news to the majority of people or not. Seems like it might not be. So just moving on a little bit, as you know, you and I, we talked about some questions that we think people might like to have answered. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, as well as your experience of working at two of the fastest growing tech companies in the world, at Salesforce and then at Twilio, and it's a very interesting segue that you talked about leaving Salesforce and working at Twilio. Talk to me a little bit, if you don't mind, about how a scale up or an established tech company like Twilio manages legal ops, because for everybody who's watching, I'm slightly geeky about operations, not necessarily from a tech perspective, because I've never worked in a tech operations, but I used to manage supermarkets, and where operations is everything. So when you and I were chatting a couple of weeks ago before we lined this up, I was sort of getting very excited about the way that you manage the operations in terms of your team. Tell us a little bit about how you manage, let's call it legal tech or LawTech legal ops at the moment. Just give us some examples about some of the work that you do to facilitate that. Can't have enough lawyers, so let's use tech to facilitate speed, accuracy, presumably a bunch about compliance, etc. in there, because I think that's where people really want to get very close to the page in terms of understanding what it is that people actually do with LawTech. So feel free to take that in any direction you like, but I think it would be a real interesting insight for the people who are watching.
No, sure, that's fine. Thanks, Martin, for that question. I think I just have to put it out there that I'm not geeky as well. I'm not like the most lawyer that's good at coding and all of that. But that really shows that, frankly, operations doesn't have to be anything too complex. So the first thing I would say is, don't be overwhelmed by it. Don't be overwhelmed by it. There are quick wins that things you can quickly do to get quick wins and just improve efficiency quite quickly. One of the things I will say is, to some extent, letting go, almost like losing control. The reason I say that is, I've worked in places where, you know, the sense of importance as a lawyer, the legal department, you hold on to everything. Everybody wants an agreement, they have to come to you. Every single iteration in an agreement, it has to come from you. And you get something in doing many things that if you really step back and look at it, is it adding value? Is it is it adding value? Is it improving the process? Is it driving efficiency? Not necessarily. And one of those things is, let's take agreement generation, for example. When I was at the SaaS company that provided e-commerce platforms, nobody could issue out a master framework agreement or an SOW or even an NDA except they came to legal. So I'm busy, I'm generating this agreement. But then I moved to Salesforce, and now what's really all we do is we use our existing contract management tool, you know, and we just have that additional functions where people can self-service. Why can't you go and populate the agreement yourself? The system will always give it a unique agreement number. So it doesn't matter if it comes from me to you or if really the system gives it to you. That just takes away that, you know, recurring work. And so it's almost like letting go and not holding on or driving efficiency. Or something like, I can say that so many times when we're working on deals, because we support primarily the sales team, the sales function, there are some requests that because of the way a deal is structured, you need to add some non-standard terms, what we would call special terms. Why do I have to draft that every time? If we have agreed a language that can almost work, you know, for certain exceptions, why can't we populate that language into the system so that if that deal construct meets that exception, the sales rep can click on that option and it just generates within the agreement. So the deal can close without me touching it. That's driving efficiency. So I think the first thing I just want to say is that there's some quick wins that each of us, if we look at the way we're operating, what we have within our departments, within our companies, within our firms, we can say, are there additional functionalities perhaps I'm not using? It might be giving up some control, but really, it could really help you focus on things that add value. The other thing I would say is, aside the quick wins, I know that one of the main constraints is always budget. And I know that one of the main constraints is, oh, you know, we don't have sign off, it's going to cost X amount of money. What tools have the wider business adopted? What systems are they using? And this is really something that we are capitalizing on at Twilio. We're asking ourselves, who are our primary customers? Our primary customers are the sales team. These are business partners. Where are they carrying out on all their engagement? There is a CRM tool that the company has already bought. The company has already invested in this tool. Different departments are using it. Why can't we go onto that CRM tool and build applications and build workflows and build collaborative pages, you know, to really help us engage better with sales? And we don't need any huge budget for that. So one of the things we've done at Twilio, for example, is we've built out what we call the legal depot. It's just a page that brings the sales team and the legal team together. So for all your ad hoc legal questions, oh, can I do this? What's our insurance cover? All those kind of simple things, you can post on the legal depot and one member of the legal team will answer. Now, the good thing is that it's a searchable page within a system and a tool that sales are very familiar with. So if somebody has the same or similar question, they can just search, oh, I can see that A asked this question 2 weeks ago. This is the way the legal team answered it. They just take the answer and they run with it. And so you don't have to repeat yourself each time. And I don't have to be answering the same question that my colleague in the East, in North America, in New York, is answering, or the one in San Francisco is repeating the same answers over and over again. And as people are coming to that page, we can see that, you know, the adoption is growing. What we are then doing is building content for self-service. So simple things like even the signature process. Just build like a workflow, something that is visual, that just says this is the way it works. And again, give them back the control. If the agreement is negotiated, if it's within the system, why must legal own the process of getting the right signatories to sign it. Why can't you get certified for whatever um, 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 electronic signature tool we have? So we use DocuSign, for example. We have all our AEs when you join Twilio to become DocuSign certified. So you can launch signature yourself. It doesn't have to rest with my team. So it's almost like giving them, empowering them, giving them ownership. And what we're doing is trying to wear our customers' shoes to say they just want their deals to move as speedily as possible. Where can we remove those roadblocks without any big budget bidding, but thinking about the systems that the company has already invested in and just leveraging those to build applications that work for us. We're also currently we're doing this within Twilio at the moment. We're building out what we're calling deal support requests. We actually we learned this from Salesforce. Some of us came from Salesforce, and we're kind of we're just taking that learning and trying to replicate it here at Twilio. Again, going to the tool that our customers, primary customers, are using, we want them to instruct us, not by email, instruct us within that tool. So we're building out the template now. And it links directly to the opportunity. So instead of somebody sending me a request to say, I have this deal, I need your help to negotiate it, and then I'm asking for all the background information. What is the size of the deal? Who is the customer? What is this? And everything, they've already documented that within the systems, right? The CRM system. So when they create that instruction to the legal team, it pulls all of that information. They don't need to repeat themselves. I can see that. And the other thing is, as an in-house counsel, there's a lot of project management that you do when you're working on a deal. You're coordinating responses from the infrastructure team, the security team, the product teams. We also want to make sure that there's visibility. Our primary clients who are sales, we want them to know what is going on when we've gone behind the scenes to, act as the quarterback, really. So we want to bring that conversation to a platform where they can say, oh, yes, the product team is helping with this. They're responding. I can see that. So all we have done, to be honest, is just take a system that the company has already invested in, right? And we are now saying, how can we build our workflows? How can we just create a page? How can we optimize the system to make it work for us? It might not have been a system that was designed specifically for LawTech, but that's the beauty of technology now, right? You can use it for your own use case, and that's what we're doing. The last example I will give, just before I pause, is it doesn't even have to be anything too sophisticated, honestly. For example, because I support the EMEA regional team, within that region, we have sub-territories. So we have 5 sub-territories. And each of those territories have their own sales leaders. Now, if you think about it, they have one common goal, but at the same time, their interests don't always align. Everybody's trying to protect their numbers, push their own deals, argue that their deals should take priority. There are not enough human beings within the legal team to do the job for every deal to be, top priority at the same time. So what did I do? I just took a normal spreadsheet, Google Worksheet, just like an Excel spreadsheet. I created that to track what we're getting, where we are. But guess what the game changer was? I linked that back to the CRM team, CRM tool that we have. Because in that CRM tool, I know that is where they are giving their executives, their VPs, information about whether this is really a deal that is far-fetched. It's just in the pipeline. We're still trying to convince the customer that we are the supplier. Or it's one that is saying, yes, we won the deal. In fact, we're committing to the company that we're going to bring it in this quarter. Or perhaps it's something that is saying, it's best case. We know we have a good shot. We won the deal, but considering everything, we think this is going to come in the last quarter of the year. Now, there's some salespeople that just feel, even though they know a deal is going to close at the last quarter of the year, but I just want something to be happening. And so they come to you legal. They're like, it's urgent, you do it. And you're reacting. You're just reacting. And I said, prioritization, we have to do it with integrity. The only way we can do it is to link it back to what you were telling the business, what you're forecasting, what category you're putting that in. And I just created 2 extra columns within my spreadsheet, got somebody internally within the company to help me with that. And those columns are automatically updated as the information is updated within the CRM system, it became a game changer for us. We bought ourselves time. So you can't just argue that everything is urgent, has to be the top priority one at all times. No, based on the information you're providing to the business, we're either going to bump it up or we're going to bump it down. But that's just the way that we can manage the limited legal resource we have to support a huge sales organization that is growing.
Thank you. That's really interesting, and it's provoked a lot of questions in my mind. Probably good for you to have a little break, maybe a little drink. I was going to suggest to Chrissy, who's running the back end of this for us, that maybe we launch our next poll, if we could, Chrissy. I think we're quite interested to know from an audience perspective who's out there, because as far as the three of us are concerned, we're having a conversation between us. So let's hope that the people who are out there and are interested to participate. So, Chrissy, if you could launch the next poll, that would be super. I think the question is going to come up. Here we go. The next question, Chrissy, the one about who's in it. That's the one. Yep. Okay. So this is the question which is on Vvox just now about where you work. So if you could fill that out, that would be really helpful for us to understand what the nature of the audience is, and we can maybe start thinking about how we tailor the questions that we chat through next, Joy, based on who's out there, whether they be lawyers in private practice, lawyers in-house, or people who are techies, or people who have wandered into YouTube because there's nothing else left to do. So Chris, just thinking it from the perspective is that you've got a lawyerly lens, and as well as a as a corporate lens on this. What are you thinking in terms of stuff that has sort of pricked your interest and made you think that other people, because you and I speak to a lot of people in the world of LawTech, you probably more from a law perspective. What are you thinking about some of the stuff that Joy's outlined so far?
So I think that there's one bit, I think, Joy, you've hit on one thing that I talk about all the time, is how can you prioritize and decide what you're going to do from a technology perspective if you don't understand the work that you already do, and take that step back to be able to think about what are the processes, who is it you're servicing, where is all that workload going to, so that you can appropriately manage it. And it feels that it can often be hard, particularly with a large legal function, as how do you take that step back when you've got all these competing interests, where there's lawyers that see technology that they could be using, that are thinking about how they could advance and how they could do things better. They've obviously got their own internal business clients that are chomping at the bit to get stuff done. So it becomes a battle to decide initially how do you prioritize and how do you build out your IT strategy and your tech strategy. But it's the key bit, I think, and I agree with you, is you've got to sit back and look at the whole piece and start to identify where the work is and how it's happening. How do you break that cycle so that you can actually take that step back when you've got all these conflicting priorities and people are demanding different requirements? How do you find that way of breaking the cycle so that you can think about the work that you're doing and mapping it out?
Yeah, I mean, it's very... I know what you mean, because I found myself in that situation some months ago, earlier on this year, where we're always quenching fires, right? We're just reacting one thing after the other. Like, you really don't have that space to lift your head and think more strategically. What I would say is, it might seem like, how can you find the time to do that? But if you do that, you will liberate yourself. You will. You can't win otherwise. You really can't. Because when I took on the burden of trying to say, I will prioritize, I will decide, oh, this, okay, I'll just try and do this, and then I'm doing that, and then another one is going to, it's not working. I had to push it back. I had to push it back to these leaders to say, you prioritize. I take the cue from you. Look, I'm providing a service to you, right? And I want to make sure that I'm providing that service in a way that works for you. So you tell me what you want me to work on, and I will work on it. The first thing is, I'm not going to have siloed conversations with A, B, C, D. I need to lift that conversation to have it at a more regional level, not at each territory level. The second thing is, if you're telling me A, B, C, D, E, that the source of truth regarding the numbers and the forecast and the commits and everything you're giving the company is within the system, I'm pulling the data from that system. So if you're saying something is inaccurate, perhaps you need to update that system. Then we can rethink it. If the competing priorities then, or based on what you put in within the system, it's clear that we should be prioritizing this deal X above Z. I think I then make, because I'm presenting the data to them, I'm like, are you guys agreed that, based on the capacity we have now, we're going to like focus it on, and yeah, like the manager for said is going to grumble and be like, yes, I agree. But it's not on me. It's not on me anymore. And it's changed. Honestly, it's turned it around. So it's easy to get sucked in to say, yeah, but I don't even have the time to do that. But if you can just squeeze out and find the time to do that, it will free up more of your time, and it will really help you to start doing more value add things and supporting your customers more efficiently.
Cool. Yeah. I think that's really great insight, and somebody that we've got some questions coming through, and we've got a poll to answer, so it's all happening at once, which is great. I would encourage people to ask more questions, because the three people who have asked questions are definitely getting their questions asked in a moment. But I wonder, Chrissy, if you could just display for us the poll and where our people are coming from. Oh, here we go. Interesting. So I think that what we've got is nice. Interestingly, the people who have rocked up today are mostly from tech companies. So that's interesting, isn't it? So we've got, things are changing. It's very dynamic, isn't it? So a lawyer in private practice, almost equal given the numbers of people who are out there. We've got, I think, 43 people who've answered the survey. Kind of split between lawyers, they're from private practice, and from GCs or in-house. A larger number of people who are in a tech company, and a group of people who have wandered in off the street, which is interesting. Okay, so I think thanks very much, Chrissy and Ash. That's cool. If we can just take that down, that gives us a bit of insight as to where we should be kind of bringing our questions from. I've got a question here, Joy. So I think before I ask you another question, which is interesting to me, maybe we should go to the audience and see what they're interested in hearing about. Just a couple of seconds ago, got this in, which says, such great insights, Joy. Thanks very much. Could you tell us about the type of legal work that you send to external lawyers, and what would need to change for you to switch to doing that work in-house? So a very specific question about how you manage your legal workload.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of budget for external lawyers, which I'm sure most people within in-house departments will have the same situation. So we usually, what we send to external lawyers, if it's litigation, we engage them. If it's specific work, regulatory work, I know recently I was working on a transaction where there was specific regulations in Poland, so we needed to engage their services. We also engage them for localization. So we're trying to, we're an American company, Twilio is an American company, but we really want to make our templates and all of that, our agreements, more friendlier, or localize them to really work for the jurisdictions we support here within EMEA. So those are the type of work that we outsource. Other than that, to be honest, we do practically everything in-house. We do, and that is why optimization is key for us. It's the ratio of lawyers to the sales reps, or I would say business people we support, is almost like 1 to 35, 40 is huge. And the only way you can do that, frankly, is, so that's why I kept saying that it's little things. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have the big budget before you can make iterations. I think it's just thinking about what can you let go? What is it that you're holding on to that perhaps you can let go and allow people to run with it? And how can you iterate what's in your hands, the existing tools and systems that you have as a company? But what we just do, what we've decided we have to do, and this is the same for EMEA, this is the same for our team in North America, in APAC, is prioritization. That's the way forward. We used to do SLAs, we were killing ourselves, right? So we're going with SLAs of saying 3 business days, 5 business days. It doesn't always work like that. But when you switch that SLA commitment on its head and you go with prioritization, then I think it makes a lot of difference. And not everything is going to be dealt with immediately, but ultimately you then get to it as it moves up in priority.
And from what you've described, even in the little time that we've been talking, it's really relentless focus on your core objective, which is that you work for the commercial part of the business, so sales is dominant. And actually, how do you support the sales function to close as many deals as they can? It is very clear from what you've talked about.
Sorry, just to add one more thing, because one of our core values at Twilio is we say ruthless prioritization. There was a huge debate around the word ruthless, but we ended up saying yes, it has to be there, and it's one of, so we ruthlessly prioritize. You can't stretch yourself thin against everything. You end up not achieving so much. So you have to really decide what is it you want to achieve, over X period amount of time, and then keep moving on.
Yeah, that relentless focus you just talked about, also ruthless focus that you just described. I'm going to ask a question which I think plays to the broad audience that we have. So we'll come back to the lawyers in a second. So, question that we wanted to ask you is that Twilio is essentially a company that exploits and uses API connectivity. So in a world where APIs are enabling more tech to talk to other tech, like other platforms, what do you think the future holds for LawTech in that context?
I think the future is exciting, to be honest. So when I started working on technology contracts earlier on, like most of the deals would be like, I don't know, £1 million deals, multi-year deals, like big projects, scoping it out, knowing everything, what the end solution should be. Not necessarily the case now. One of my colleagues said it's almost akin to before you wanted to replace a window and you had to buy a house to get the window. The beauty about APIs is you can just say, I just need the window. I just want to start with the doors. Most people that use Twilio are actually developers. It's actually now that, we have this direct strategy that we're selling to lots of enterprise companies, but most of our users are developers. So you can start using Twilio, I can start using Twilio. And the beautiful thing is that is on pay-as-you-go model. So I think it's not just about Twilio, but it's the fact that with the democratization of technology, the best technologies have become available to each of us without having to break the bank. That's the thing. So people can just start if you know how to code, or if you have people within your organization that know how to play around with these things. You don't need a big budget. Credit card, you can start playing around. Okay, I just want to write this. I just want to organize the workflow this way. Can this help me do that? And then you can leverage that. The other thing as well is, as people are selling solutions, some of the things that are on their mind are obviously agility, integration, ability to integrate with other systems. So whilst you would have siloed systems in the past, not anymore. It's a unique selling point for any sales team. So perhaps you have a system that all you need to do is integrate it into something else, into another application or into another system that is somewhere within your organization as well. And if those two systems can talk, you can drive efficiency without needing to splash out. So what I would say is I think the future is really exciting because each and every one of us now have access. We can start doing what we want to do. These things are quite customizable. They are scalable. You can start small. If your business grows, you don't have to, commit to something so big that you're not using. And it's flexible as well. You can integrate it and frankly make it work the way that suits you. We have about 200,000 active accounts on Twilio. I have to say that every use case is different, right? It's the same API, it's the same, we call it building blocks that we give to our customer. What each of those customers do with it is completely different because everybody says, this is my business. This is the way I want to engage with my own customers. This is my strategy. And based on that, they can build out the applications to really reflect that. And it's not specific to the wider other departments or other industries or other parts like marketing or sales or procurement. I think that whatever those things are doing to drive efficiency, people within the legal sector could also leverage on that and adopt that. One example I want to give is, and we did this at Salesforce and we're replicating it here at Twilio as well, is the way the sales organization, the sales team work is within the tools they have what we call dashboards. So you can see that this team, this is the way they're tracking. This the number of deals this account executive has. This is where this opportunity is likely to be lost, is likely to be won. It can be converted, all of that. Why can't you have dashboards for lawyers? Why can't we really create dashboards for lawyers? And we're doing that here at Twilio. It's simple. And then I can have visibility over what my team is doing. My boss in San Francisco can have more visibility over what I'm doing. Frankly, my business partners, the sales teams, can have visibility over what I'm doing. It helps, they're more empathetic because they're like, oh, look at all the stuff you're doing. It's not just my one request. It brings about visibility. So I'm really excited. I think the future is great because we don't have to wait for big budgets. We don't have to wait for bespoke solutions that are built or created with specific intent for legal services. I think we can leverage any application and adapt it and make it work for us.
Nice. I've got actually, Chris, I think there's some stuff that you can pick up on there, but I just want to ask one question before I ask Chris to pick up. Is that from what you sounds like there, Joy, do you use Twilio at Twilio?
That's a very good. That's a very good question. Not yet. But not yet. We use Twilio at Twilio. Pardon me. So within the wider Twilio org, yes, we definitely use Twilio at Twilio. But within the legal team, what we do is we are using existing investments, basically existing applications and investments that the company has, applications that the company has already invested in. And we're saying we can still use those, although they were not, if the companies that sell those applications will never market it to a law firm. They will not necessarily come to a legal department and say, oh, this is my customer engagement tool. But we're saying we also have internal customers that we're engaging with. There is no reason why we can't build something out of this, or there is no reason why we cannot start collaborating with the sales team on a system or a tool that they're already using. You can add additional users and, I don't know, just get extra subscription. You don't necessarily have to splash out. So that's really the way we are, what we're doing at the moment. But yeah, maybe in the future we'll start building out using our own APIs as well.
So I'm going to ask Chris to just ask you a question in a moment, but I want to preempt people that there's a poll coming up in about 6 minutes' time. So get ready to think about that. Chris, I saw you and I both smiling about the idea of lawyers having dashboards. What are you thinking about that?
Look, I'd love it, and it goes back to the data point that we were talking about before. The more that you can capture, and then the more you can. I mean, I could just picture myself as a GC, just having like a Starship Enterprise dashboard showing me everything that's going on and seeing where the peaks and trends are that are kind of kicking off as demand comes through. The more that we've got, data's power, right? And being able to capture more of that and being able to present it in the right way is going to really help things. But there's one thing that also sprung to mind through all of that is just where, what are the problems that you have to be solved by LawTech? And is there there's a gap where you are just not seeing something out in the market that's even getting close to solving any of those problems?
I think there are lots of things that can be solved. I mean, we've brainstormed and we've just recently, 2 members of our team have now dedicated their efforts specifically at what we call legal operations, like to just give it more focus. And we're looking at different tools because at the moment there are things that, so for those of us that support the sales team, the commercial legal team, we're really using the CRM tool. But then the procurement, those that focus on procurement contracts are using another tool. Those that focus on carrier contracts are using another tool. So we're like, we need to bring everything together because everything is honestly interconnected.
Yeah.
We're looking at different tools. One of the things we want to be able to capture is, to be honest, I think we can get to the point where some of the negotiations we do tools can help us do that. We're already taking small steps. Like when we work on order forms and all of that, we populated this pre-approved fallback languages. But even for the master service agreement, to be honest, I think you can get to that point. I think you can also get to the point where when you're negotiating, instead of just presenting everything, you can really capture what the must haves are and relate it to how it's called for your business. And so when the customer, the external customer, receives that, it sets the tone and gives that understanding even before the legal calls and everybody tearing their heads apart and just feeling it's me winning this versus you winning this. So I think there's opportunity to leverage technology there. But one other area that we've identified is tracking what we are actually agreeing in all of these contracts. We sign only God knows how many agreements we negotiate and sign each quarter, quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter. What are the things that, that are peculiar? Maybe we've agreed to a different process. Who owns that process? Who can make it happen if we're committing to something bespoke for one customer? How do we track that without somebody manually having to populate it? How can we use the systems we have to extract that? So we're looking at it too. And at the moment that we're kind of like testing it out to see if it can help us do that. So there's so many things like I feel that we're doing and we can keep doing, and we'll keep identifying these gaps. But our policy within our department is when we identify the gaps, the first thing is there anything internal that we have that we can use to address those? And if there isn't, of course, there are some instances where we then make the case with the data that we have for new applications.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because it feels like you kind of need to have that backbone that allows you to build everything else off the side of it. So if you've got that core understanding as to the service that you're providing and the work that your lawyers are doing, you're then able to build out the other side of that. So you can start to make the determination as to who should be doing that work. Should it be a lawyer? Should it be tech? Should it be one of your external law firms? Should it be an alternate legal service provider? And you've got to have something that runs through the core, which you've started to do, it sounds like, through the workflow that you've started to capture, and importantly linking into those CRM systems so that you can define and then start to build. It feels like that's the essential backbone that you need to have.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that.
Joy, there's a question come up from one of the audience, which I'm really pleased about. So I'm just going to read this one to you. So breaking the mold of working in silos within a tech company is such a big win. Product developers, sales, commercial, and legal must represent all levels of the process. But as you know, there are only so many hours in a day. You talked about prioritization of workload, but how do you split your time between being a GC for the business as opposed to being a legal builder for the business?
Yeah, so I don't have to build the things myself. To be honest, part of the reason is having relationships. So the prioritization spreadsheet I talked about, for example, all I had to do was call a colleague that I support. I knew he's quite savvy with this thing, but I thought about the idea. So it's not about going and saying, oh, I don't know, what can I do? They have their own workload as well. They're doing their stuff. I just said, look, there must be a way for this to talk to the CRM system. And I want to pull that data. Is it something you can help me with? And they said, I will try. He kind of tried day one, day two, and finally he figured it out. And they said, okay, can I set up 20 minutes for you to walk me through how that works, right? So it's again, it's not the function is not siloed as the person who asked the question recognized. There are many other teams, and so there are resources within the wider company that you can lean on. If you find out that there is a way that the marketing team, for example, engage their customers or run their campaigns that really work, you can just say, can I find out how you guys do that? If they've done it before, it might be something that you can just, use that template and replicate it. And people are usually happy to help. So what we do is, and another thing I would say is, if you find somebody within your team that has a spark and has an interest in this, use it. I have a colleague who is a senior contracts manager. He loves it. He just loves playing with these things. He would sit down and say, oh, this is what I came up with. Yeah, why not? That is somebody who has a spark for it. It might not be his core job spec, but because he's interested and he's finding out and he likes to play around with it, he wants to even get techy. I mean, at Twilio, we're encouraged every Twilion, as we call ourselves, we're given the opportunity to learn basic coding. so you should learn that, right? We call it a bootcamp, and you learn that. So if you have somebody like that within your team, you can use them to leverage that interest and use them to explore what is possible. It's still for the benefit of everybody. So it doesn't mean that you have to do it yourself. You can use the resources you have within the legal team as in human resources and within your wider organizations. If you're building good relationships, people will always want to reach out and help.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask Chrissy in the background to make the next poll live. Can't believe we've been going for 52 minutes. It's time is passing very quickly. You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job with all the chatting. So this, I think, is probably we'll maybe use this to close off our conversation this morning, Joy. The question that we're asking the audience through Vvox is: do you think that adopting LawTech is easier in a tech company than in a law firm? So please, it's a binary poll. Answer your question yes or no, and we'll very quickly be able to work out whether that's the case. Joy, if you wouldn't mind having a bit of a think about that, because that's the question we're going to come to next. And then one of the, I think we touched on it earlier on, so perhaps also just to whilst we're waiting for the people to do the poll, is that one of the questions that comes up constantly in these, if either when we do them face to face, Chris, or when we're running them as webinars, is a question about how did you get into this, and how would you recommend other people get into this sort of work? So what advice would you give, based on your experience, about lawyers who are looking to get into the tech space? Maybe a very brief segue to that, and then we can come back to the poll results.
No, sure, that's fine. I would say that, I got into it by just frankly putting myself forward for when we're procuring services and just raising my hands to say, yeah, I'll give that a try. I've never negotiated a software license agreement, but I'll give it a try. I've never negotiated a cloud agreement, but I'll give it a try. I'll ask questions, I'll try to find out more. If there are product trainings for the product team, I'll spend time, I'll look at it, I'll actually read, listen to those trainings and webinars just to find out more, right? So all I would say is, and this will lead into our question really about tech companies versus non-tech companies. More companies, almost every business is adopting technology, using technology, depending on the scale, some quite a lot, some very little, but to the extent that your business is whether selling or procuring or consulting, get involved in it. If that's something you're interested in. And another thing is speak up about what you're interested in. I think this is not just even about LawTech. Like generally, many times we're nursing something for our careers and where we want to go, but we don't speak. And we're like, oh, they should know. Ask. Be bold enough to ask. Be bold enough to say, this is where I can see myself or what I'm interested in. Can I explore that? Can I try that? Can I shadow you on that? And if you put yourself forward, people are always looking for, members of team members that are willing to help. In my case, I would never turn that down. So that's what I will say really. The lady who, when I was at Salesforce, started the deal support request was just a lawyer. She loved this kind of tech things. She started playing around with it. She built out that template. That template she used is what we at Twilio are thinking, that was such a good tool. Can we replicate that? She didn't apply for a job as a legal ops person. She was a core lawyer negotiating agreements, talking about liabilities and indemnities, but thinking about efficiency as well. And then taking that step after identifying the problem to say, what can I do? And how can I get my hands dirty to improve this? So that's what I will say as for how do you get into this. And another thing is apply for the roles. Apply for the roles. And you mustn't take a role that is exactly a replica of the role you're living. Frankly, there's nothing new to the new role. Why are you going there? There has to be some new challenge, something exciting. So they could say, oh, the experience is not exactly the same. Yes, but it's transferable. And the newness is actually why I'm coming for it. And it brings new energy, new enthusiasm. But don't stop until at least you've tried. That's I'll pause there. Yeah.
Great, good, very sound advice on all fronts, career in tech or career otherwise.
Yes.
Chris, I wonder if we could see the results of the poll on screen. Thank you. Okay, so overwhelmingly, we're thinking that It's changing as we speak, but I think overwhelmingly we can say that people do think it's easier to adopt LawTech in a tech company than in a law firm. So just as we close off, are you based on your very wide experience, thanks, Chrissy, we can go back to the main screen now. Is based on your experience of being a barrister, being a lawyer in private practice, and now being a GC and then an in-house, would you say the same?
To be honest, I would say it depends, and I will say that for 3 reasons. Yes, it depends on the culture of the place. It depends on the perception of the leaders within the team. And frankly, it depends on, of course, budget as well. But the reason I say it depends is because I worked for a SaaS, pure SaaS company, e-commerce platform. No LawTech in that sense. Everything was manual. I'm working for another company at about the same size and is a completely different picture. So it's all about your perception, right? And the other thing, the way I'll flip that question is to say, when we say tech companies, what do we really mean? The line is becoming blurred and blurred and blurred. So although you might not be providing tech services, you may very well be a tech company. So look again at what you have within your company and try to leverage that. Don't have that mental block to say, because we're not a tech company, we can't do all of these wonderful things. There are really things you can start doing with whatever systems and tools you have.
Thank you. So anybody who's seen me do this sort of thing before knows that I'm very keen that we finish these things on time, because time is precious for a lot of people. So I think that now that we're 2 minutes out, I think that's probably an adequate number of questions, and you probably need a rest, Joy, because you've been chatting for a long time. So thanks very much. I think we're delighted that you came on. I'm hoping that the people who are watching got a good deal of insight, and certainly I did from what you were chatting to. So thank you. We used to have an applause button, so a little ripple of applause. Thank you very much. So I think that's it from me. Anything to add from you, your perspective, Chris?
Just to remind you of the disclaimer that I had at the very beginning, this is all just information that is aimed at helping support you in any decisions that you're making, but you should make your own research. And all of the pieces that we've put out today and that we've talked around today may not be relevant to your business, and you've all got your own individual things to think about. So please do consider that. We are just here to help in terms of providing that wider research piece. But thank you very much for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next time.